third pair here would be 1, 0. Here would be 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. Of course, our cosine is our x, and our sine is our y value. So if you're looking at negative 2 pi, for instance, well, negative 2 pi means that you're going to go one revolution around, but instead of going in a positive direction, you're going to go in a negative direction. Well, you still land here, and the sine value there is 0. At negative 3 pi over 2, instead of going this way 3, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, and so my sine there is 1. The sine at negative pi is going to be 0. The sine at negative pi over 2 is going to be negative 1. The sine at 0 is 0. The sine at pi over 2 is 1. The sine at pi is 0. The sine at 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. And the sine at 2 pi is 0. So if we graph this function here, we're going to actually count up 4 units and call that our positive 1, and down 4 units we're going to call that our negative 1. Negative pi over 2, I'm going to label if you graph these points, negative 2 pi, 0, negative 3 pi over 2, positive 1, negative pi, 0, negative pi over 2, negative 1, 0, 0, pi over 2, 1, pi, 0, 3 pi over 2, negative 1, 2 pi, 0. And you connect these points. You can see your sine function. You notice that the sine function it repeats itself. Well, the sine function starts at 0, 0, and one cycle of pi ends at 2 pi, 0. The halfway point on your sine function happens at pi, 0. Of course, your highest peak is 1 and your lowest peak is negative 1. These peaks that we see, we call these peaks the amplitude. The amplitude is the number in front of sine or cosine, and these peaks are extended to that number. A negative number in the front will change the flow. So what you need to know about the amplitude is that the amplitude is the number in front of sine or cosine, and the peaks are extended to that number. So in this function here, it was f of x equals sine x. So you can see that the number in front of sine is 1, and so my peak up is 1 and my peak down is negative 1. If this number right here had been 4, then the peak up would rise up to 4, and the peak down would rise down to negative 4. A negative number will also, well, if it's a positive 4, your peak up is going to be 4 and your peak down is negative 4. If that 4 was a negative number, a negative number in front of your sine function will change the flow. So you see here that your flow right now is up and then down. That's your positive. Let's say that number in front was negative, then it's going to change your flow. Instead of being up and then down, it's going to be down and then it's going to be up. It's going to flip it. The period, like we talked about here, one cycle ending at 2 pi over 0, the period is how long it takes to complete one cycle of your function. So the period is how long it takes to complete one cycle. Of course, you have a formula, and the formula for your period is 2 pi over b, where b is y equals sine bx or y equals cosine bx. And in a minute we're going to talk about that cosine function. If you have sine of negative x, that's going to make it negative sine of x, but if it's cosine of negative x, that will be a positive cosine of x. Something positive and or negative in the inside of your function, just like if you had like x minus 4 quantity squared with a quadratic and that shifted your graph left and right, the same thing will happen with your sine and cosine functions. If something is positive or negative, it will shift that graph left or right. The left and right endpoints of a one cycle interval can be determined by solving these equations. So remember, our beginning and end points were 0 and 2 pi. So that's how we choose the 0, that we set that bx minus c equal to 0, and we set bx minus c equal to 2 pi. That is going to help us to determine our beginning and ending points when we shift left and right. Now, you will have a vertical translation. Remember, vertical translation means vertical is up and down. And a vertical translation occurs when that number is outside of the trig function. For example, it would say something like the sine of x plus 1. Now remember that horizontal translation, left and right, that is occurring right here.